Well, welcome back to the study on the fruit of the Spirit. I hope you had an awesome week with Missions Conference. And as we jump back in, we're going to jump into kindness. Now, this was the first one that I remember learning as a fruit of the Spirit. In fact, it's the first verse I remember memorizing as my mom told me to be kind to people. So Ephesians 4:32, be kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. So this is that thing we tell our children, and that's when I heard it a lot. You need to be kind. You need to be kind. Can you be kind? Be kind. Be kind to your sister. Be kind to the kid at the school. Be kind. Be kind. Be kind. And it was interesting as I walked along in my life. Quickly, kindness in my own thought became not being mean. So kindness was just not being mean to my sister, not saying mean things to her, not doing mean things or selfish things. And as I got older, it kind of stayed the same. What's kindness? If you were to ask me in my teens, what's kindness? It would be something to the effect of, not being mean to someone else or not doing unkind things to someone else. But as you start to unpack the scriptures, as you start to look at what the scripture says and what God's commanded us to do, you find that there's much more to kindness than just not being mean. In fact, if we look at the scriptures, we see a couple things here that'll point to this. So, number one, we see that we're told to live a life that is an example of Jesus' life, an example of God's kindness. And we have a few verses. We're not going to go to each one of these here, but let me just give you a few of many. Ephesians 4:32, we just talked about there. Be ye kind one to another. It's really talking about Christians there, but be kind one to another. Galatians 6:10 also talks about this. It doubles down on the kindness to other Christians. It says, be kind to everyone, but especially those who are in the household of faith. It's interesting, real quick here, that he has to push us, be kind to those around you, those in your community group, in your church, in your youth group, those Christians in your school with you, in your work environment. There's a push, and it's interesting sometimes that we can struggle being kind to those around us in the household of faith. But he says, be kind to them. He also says in Luke 6:35, be kind to your enemies, those who aren't part of your church family, part of your own family, part of your friend group. Be kind to them. And actually, Proverbs 11:17 talks about the fact that it's actually a benefit to you to be kind as opposed to being mean. So you have in the scripture this picture of kindness that we're commanded to be kind. So we should really understand, what does kindness look like? Because you're not going to find a verse that says, kindness says, don't be mean. What's the definition of kindness? Well, just don't be mean to people. That you're not going to see that. We see a couple things throughout the scripture here, and I'm going to jump through some of these things here with you. First, we see that kindness is not selfish. It's not a selfish action. It's amazing to me how many times sin corrupts something that's good. We see this. Satan, our flesh, corrupts good things. Kindness is no different. Kindness can actually be one of the most selfish things we do. We can disguise our selfishness as kindness. Have you ever done this? I know I have been guilty of this. You're kind to someone because you want something from them. You're kind to someone because you want something in return. The boss's family, friends, you're kind to them. The coach's family or friends, you're kind to them. You want a better spot. You want something from a person, and you're kind to them. You want respect. You want recognition. And the kindness is driven actually by selfishness. Philippians 2 talks about this. Philippians 2:3 says, do nothing for selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. So there's no selfishness in kindness. It can't be driven by selfishness. Well, what is it driven by? Well, it's driven by love. Love is what drives selfishness, and it has to be. Because honestly, if you think about it, kindness is driven by love, not selfishness. Kindness is driven by love, and it really has to be, because kindness is not easy. If you actually practice biblical kindness, it's not a simple path. It is much simpler to just go, I'm not going to be mean to people. It's much simpler to see someone that's sitting alone, or see someone with a need, or see someone who, you look at them and, man, nobody's kind to them. Nobody's reaching out to them. Nobody's, fill in the blank, any acts of kindness. And just go, I'm not going to be mean to them. I'm not going to be unkind. But kindness, of what we're called to do, which is a selfless act, actually has to depend on something, because it's not natural what selfishness is, but kindness is not. So we know this is true. We need power to be kind, and this is why we're talking about the fruit of the Spirit. This is why it's written. This is a fruit of the Spirit. God is kind. Jesus was kind, we saw in his earthly ministry on this earth. And we need the Spirit's strength to be biblically kind, because we often tend to selfishness. We're not going to do it on our own, because kindness requires much from us. It requires love. It requires compassion. It requires abandoning a status or position. It requires our time. It requires work, sometimes money. It's not always easy. There are some people it's easy to be kind to, because we already love them. My family, it's easy to be kind to my family, because I already love them. But those who, I don't have a love for, I don't have that relationship with, it is hard. It takes work to be kind. Maybe they're different than your personality. It's hard to be kind to them because they're just different. Maybe their response when you are kind is kind of like off a little bit. And you're like, man, they're so different than me. I expected this back, or, I'm not doing it for thanks, but, they didn't even, their personality, maybe they annoy you. It's just like, that person annoys me, I'm not going to be kind. There's nowhere in the Bible that says, thou shalt only be kind to people who thus doesn't annoy you. You don't read that anywhere. I don't know what it is, but it's hard to be kind to those who aren't already in that circle of love, aren't already in that circle of friendship, aren't already in that. But there's no passage in Scripture that says that's an out for you. You're supposed to be kind to everyone, and especially to those in the church. So, can I give you a couple quick things about kindness? I'm going to walk through these real quick, a couple additional things here. And then I'm going to look at the passage we're going to see these in to close. All right? So, what is kindness? Well, kindness, biblical kindness, is driven by love. We said that earlier. It's driven by love. You either love the person or you're kind to them because of your love for someone else. All right? Biblical kindness. Biblical kindness is active. It doesn't easily give up. It's not the person who goes, hey, can I do this thing for you? Oh, no? Okay, no worries. All right, good. And then you're walking away, oh, I'm so glad they didn't take me up on that offer. That's not biblical kindness. It doesn't easily give up. It desires to be kind, and it takes steps. It searches and looks for people who it can be kind to. It looks for those who need someone that needs Christ, God's kindness shown to them. It looks around. Who is the person? It's interesting to me. And again, I do this too. And I think it's because it's easy for certain to show kindness to certain people. But we look around and some of the same people get all the kindness. All the same people are the ones who are receiving the kindness. And you've got those who it's like no one's kind to. And again, there's a lot of different reasons for that, but biblical kindness searches out for the people. It searches for those who need to experience God's kindness. And that follows up with biblical kindness reflects God's kindness. It's a mirror of God's kindness. Our kindness reflects God. And it's interesting to me, opportunities, I'm sure you can give testimonies, and maybe you do that here in a little bit, not as a pride thing, but just as a open door. It's amazing how kindness opens doors for the gospel. Why are you being so kind? You're just kind person. Why is that? Man, because the God of the universe was so kind to me. And he's commanded me to show that kind of kindness, and I want to be like him, and I want to show that kindness. What an awesome opportunity to share the truth. So these are just a few things, kind of this big picture of kindness. Can we look at a passage and we'll see some of this, just to kind of close this out and kind of bring this all together. So we've looked at the fact that kindness is not just not being mean. Kindness is something we need God's strength for. We can't do it on our own strength. Kindness is something we've been commanded to do. So we need to be doing this. It needs to be part of us. We need to be seen as kind people, because this is what we're commanded to do to everyone, even our enemies. But again, Paul says in Galatians, but especially those in the church, we need to be kind to each other, to our own. And this is something that comes at a cost. It is active, not passive. It takes work and diligence to be kind. So can we just turn to a passage real quick? And we could look at Jesus' life and see these acts of kindness all throughout. But there's a passage in the Old Testament that I think really just kind of encapsulates, and these last few minutes together will encapsulate this. So I'll draw attention to a couple thoughts as we walk through this. But this is the story of David and Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth is Saul's grandson. He's not, he's kind of an enemy politically, because typically when a new king comes in, gets rid of anyone who has any rightful heir to the throne, is a rightful heir to the throne. So Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, Saul's grandson. David comes in. Jonathan and Saul are now dead at this point. And David comes into power, and he said, is there still someone left from the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? Again, driven by this love of Jonathan, his deep love for Jonathan here. This is 2 Samuel 9, if I didn't say that. And so he's driven. I want to show kindness for Jonathan's sake. Who's out there that's part of this family? Now there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba, and they called him to David, and the king said to him, are you Ziba? And he said, yes, I'm your servant. And the king said, is there not still someone of the house of Saul? Which is interesting. He keeps on saying Saul too. It's for Jonathan's sake, but he's acknowledging that this is a person from the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God to him. Here you've got this focus. So kindness because of my love for Jonathan, and I want to show him the kindness of God. The servant said to the king, there is a son of Jonathan. He's crippled in his feet. The king said to him, where is he? And we go through the story where they go and they find Mephibosheth. Interesting. He's crippled in his feet. He's kind of worthless. He's a burden. And really there is this picture of this person who's not going to benefit David at all. David's not going to show kindness, and this is going to open up some passage to, something good for David. He's showing kindness to someone who's crippled in his feet. He's not going to be useful. In fact, he's going to be a little bit of a burden to David. And the king said to him, where is he? So he searches him out. They find him. And we go to verse 6. And Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came unto David, fell on his face to pay homage. And David says, Mephibosheth. Like he's excited. He's there. It says Mephibosheth. And he fell on his face before him and answered, behold, I am your servant. David said to him, do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always. So he says here, I'm bringing you in. You can eat at my table. You are now part of the family. I'm giving you everything back that your grandfather had. And he said, listen, you're part of our family now. Eat at the table. He sought him out. First he loved. He saw it based on that love. He showed kindness, reflected God's kindness, and it cost him something. He gave up what he rightfully had. He brought him to the table. He took on the needs of Mephibosheth. And if we were to go to the very end of this chapter, It says, verse 13, so Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate always at the king's table. Now he was lame in both feet. I think this is the author here saying, listen, David follows through with this. He never stopped showing his kindness. And Mephibosheth literally brought nothing to the table. He was lame in both feet. He was drawing this attention again to the fact that Mephibosheth wasn't bringing anything profitable to David's world. And David still showed kindness. Does this remind you of anyone? Didn't God seek us out? We bring nothing to the table. We have no right. God sought us out and brought us to his family, to his table. Isn't that awesome? This is the kind of love or kindness that God has called us to show. So my question to you, are you showing this kind of kindness? Are you eagerly trying to show biblical kindness to others? Are you willing? Or are you turning away? Are you settling for just not being mean to that person? Or are you showing biblical kindness and reflecting Christ? What you're going to find is you're going to encourage those in the church and be used by God to lift them up and show his kindness. Remember, God can't come down. Jesus has gone back to heaven. He has left it to us to show his kindness to others. So the people in the church, are you showing kindness to them? What about the enemies, those people you're working around who might not be an enemy of yours, an enemy of God's, showing kindness to them? So I'd encourage you, show biblical kindness. Don't settle for anything less. Hope you have a great night.